Many Fidos. Too many Fidos to count. All right. Welcome. Welcome, whoever is here. How are you? How are you doing? Little munchkin. Munchkin pie. I am here in Kiev still. Actually dread leaving Kiev. It's gonna be a mess. My back's gonna break to the end, to the finish. It's gonna be unpleasant. I'm eating an Oreo. Providing you with the ASMR experience. Of a typical relaxed Warzone stream. You say low energy, I say soothing vibes. I say necessary respite from the horrors of our daily existence. Isn't that right? Let me see. Hello, fake Alec Howard Parker. How are you? That's right. I'm gonna start with a debate. Might as well. Since people are still gathering, I hope. We're gonna start with a little bit of a thing, which has Monsieur Sikorski present, apparently. A big debate, an old debate that is still interesting. I wanna Monk debate, Ukraine war, Stephen Walls, John Mersheimer, a Mersheimer debate, the ultra realist. I'm going into IR, I don't know, IR theory. You are well? That is good. It is well that you are well. It is very well that you are well. Or well. So we are going to delve into Mersheimer debate. How long is this? 1 hour 36
Okay, the
minutes.
time is
1 hour 36 minutes, so we might watch some of it, but not all of it. Sikorski's in it. Damn. 3 years ago. I want to watch some of it. I wonder. We're gonna watch it with hindsight is 2020. Watching the debate 3 years later is really interesting. Oh boy. All right, so let's watch. What is the debate? Mersheimer. Let's put it on screen. Browser properties. Oh, it's already on. Okay, so let's watch it. It's gonna be interesting, I think. Oh, hold on. I received a comment. Orson Welles played a major part in normalizing black people to white people, and many people hated him for not being racist. Orson Welles, the the very famous person that was most well known for voicing a planet in a cartoon movie, Transformers, Unicron, that Orson Welles. You know, the person that is most famous, as we all know, his most famous work of art being voicing Unicron, the planet-eating robot planet. Oh, he didn't do minstrel shows, but you know what Orson Welles did? You know what Orson Welles did? I might as well play that. I don't think I have problems for playing that on stream. I'm gonna one moment. I need to one moment. My laptop is about to die. Do you know what Orson Welles was really famous for? I'm gonna tell you in a second. The answer might surprise you. No, Orson Welles was the voice of Unicron in the Transformers movie. He did Robert Downey Jr. He played. Orson Welles was well known for his wine commercials. Let me see. I'm going to show you. I wanted to do a debate first, but it seems like we're going to have to delve into Orson Welles' wine. Orson Welles wine commercial. Those were wild because you can see that he just didn't care. He just didn't care to do those commercials. And but he was, I don't know, his life was complicated, and he was wanting for money, and he ended up doing those wine commercials. I'm gonna show you. Oh yeah, also he might have been a bit famous for that movie, that one movie, Citizen Kane. But you know.
The taste
But he's known for this.
of French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There's a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. Paul Masson's superb taste shouldn't be too surprising. This champagne doesn't come from France, but it was created by a man who did. Paul Masson. Paul Masson will sell no wine.
But there are versions where he sounds like he's dying during those commercials. Original takes.
Turn camera.
Working with the master. It's just he sounds like he's dying on camera. He just doesn't give a crap. He just I'm hoping I've managed to find the thing now. Yeah. Let's look.
102, take one. With
He
overlap.
just didn't give a damn.
Action, please. Action, Orson, please.
Just do anything?
No, it's
Just do anything. Just do anything.
sorry, cut. Yeah, rolling. 102, take two.
Ah, the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence.
I love this. I love the delivery. Ah, French champagne has always been. I love this. He just doesn't give a damn. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I love those Orson Welles French champagne takes. I want to look at it again.
Yeah, rolling. 102, take two.
Ah, the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a
He also, I think, forgot his lines in those a lot. I think that was a thing as well.
California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. So Paul Masson.
102, take three.
Action, please.
Ah, the
The
Action, please.
the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. So
Cut.
Paul Masson.
yeah. Yeah, I love these. I love that he's clearly showing that he just does not care. He does not care to try in those fine commercials. What are the comments to this? We can tell it's good champagne. Orson Welles has had 3 bottles of it this morning. Or that morning, rather. Was he trolling knowing it was going to be voiced over? Maybe actually he did, you know? Was he trolling knowing it was going to be voiced over? Oh. I do love those takes. I do love them.
Champagne has always been celebrated. It's vintage dated. So Paul Masson.
I should use this as intro to stream, I swear. I swear I should use this clip as my intro for stream. Whenever I start stream, I should just start it with this clip. I should open with it. What do you think? Should I open every stream with this clip? I think it would be a brilliant idea.
102, take three.
Action, please.
Ah, the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence.
The French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. Right, it's okay. Fake Alec Kyle Parker has abandoned me. Even though I've gotten into the groove of I've started. I did a whole thing celebrating Orson Welles. Unicron. I am Unicron. Which was the last thing that he did because he died soon after. He was literally dying when recording his voice lines for a animated movie. Isn't that interesting? But what's more interesting is this Ukraine debate from 3 years ago that we're gonna watch. Monk debate, Russia-Ukraine war, Stephen Walt, John Mersheimer versus Michael McFaul and Radosław Sikorski, who happens to be the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Poland. And as a Polish patriot, I just cannot miss this chance. I just can't not watch this. And from there on, we're gonna move on to some different things.
has come to enjoin the debate.
Debate.
There we go. Thank you.
I love debates. There's nothing that I love more than debates.
John Mearsheimer, you're up first with your opening statement. Take us away.
Oh, wow. They're not wasting time. It's already straight to opening statements. Okay. All right. Mr. Mearsheimer, tell us why, from the realism perspective, Ukraine just should give up and lose the war.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here this evening, and I appreciate the organizers inviting me to this debate. The motion that Steve and I are defending is that to best bring the Ukraine crisis, this geopolitical crisis, to
Ukraine crisis. I have a big disdain for this sort of old man in suits from a safe spot just calmly debating on the existence of Ukraine, smugly making their arguments that Ukraine actually should just fold over, shrivel, and die as the Russian aggressor moves in.
an end. It's important to first start by acknowledging Russia's interests.
Of course. Of course, Mearsheimer is going to say that. Of course, the most important thing in all of that is Russia's interest, you know, because Russia basically owns the entirety of Eastern and Central Europe, for that matter. We're all just fodder to Russia's interest. Who cares about us, small insignificant countries that mean nothing in the grand scheme of realist international politics, which is basically like chess, with pawns on the board and the big players at the board.
So what we're talking about here tonight is how best to end this crisis. We're not talking about who started it, who should be blamed. We're not talking about whether Vladimir Putin is a good guy or a bad guy. The question here is how best to end it.
Yeah, the question is how best to give in to the demands of the bad guy who started it and should be blamed.
Now, this is referred to as a geopolitical crisis in the motion. My view is that it's much more than a geopolitical crisis. This is a geopolitical disaster. First of all, look at what's happening to Ukraine. This country is in the process of being destroyed. The war is only 78 days old. If this war goes on and on, you can only imagine what's going to happen to Ukraine.
Well, it's been over 3 years, and I gotta say, Russia's not been making as much progress as Mr. Mearsheimer predicted in his opening statement, so...
Estimates are by the World Bank that over $60 billion worth of damage has been inflicted on Ukraine. Some people say that it will take $600 billion to rebuild the country. Thousands of people have been killed. Cities have been destroyed. 5 million people have left the country. 6 million people are internally displaced. 13 million people are living in combat zones. For the sake of the Ukrainian people, it's essential to bring this to an end.
Yeah, for the sake of the Ukrainian people, it is essential to sell them out to Russia. Okay. Okay, Mr. Mearsheimer. Okay.
Furthermore, we run the risk...
And that is why we have to acknowledge Russia's interest first and foremost, right?
Here that this war, which is now between Ukraine and Russia, is going to turn into a war between Ukraine and the United States. It's going to turn into a great power war.
I'm sorry, what?
This war bring this to an end. Furthermore, we run the risk here that this war...
Ah, yes, something that absolutely has not happened, even though this war has been happening. It has been going on for years, and somehow it has not changed into this huge conflict between powers. Color me surprised. Mr. Mearsheimer is incorrect on that count as well. Wow. How could that have happened? Have you... Whoa. Oh my gosh.
war, which is now between Ukraine and Russia, is going to turn into a war between Ukraine and the United States. It's going to turn into a great power war. This is a really scary thought. We know very well that when war...
Oh, it's all very scary. Also, please don't forget to mention the nuclear Armageddon. Please don't forget nuclear war. That's very scary as well. There's so many scary things. So many things that we should all be scared about and therefore pressure Ukraine to give up, right? Let's all be scared. Let's all be very, very scared. Come on. Aren't you scared?
wars become long wars, they tend to escalate. And the last thing we want is a war between the United States and Russia.
But that's not
And
happening.
the reason is because the threat of nuclear war is on the table.
There you go. There you go. The bingo card is here. The bingo card is filling up. Nuclear Armageddon. Be very, very afraid. What might Russia do if we decide to support Ukraine / escalate / don't respect Russia's interest, which is bullshit, respecting Russia's interest in all of this. Complete and utter bullshit. You might as well, people like that would have been talking about respecting Germany's interest during World War II. First and foremost, we have to discuss Nazi Germany's interest and how it's been violated by Poland and all these other awful countries.
Now, many of you might think this is not a serious possibility, but that would be a fundamental mistake.
Yeah. Oh, some of you might not be scared enough, but that would be a big mistake. You have to be afraid. You have to be very, very afraid of nuclear Armageddon at all times. Because otherwise, how would Russia get what it wants? How would Russia get the upper hand in the nuclear deterrence escalation ladder if you were not afraid, right? So yeah, we should be very afraid.
You should understand what America's goal is in this war.
Ah, there you go. There are Russian interests, and then there are American goals.
America's goal is to inflict a decisive defeat on Ukraine, number one, and number two, to bring the Russian economy to its knees with economic sanctions.
What?
Number two,
What did he say?
a decisive defeat on Ukraine.
The United States' goal is to bring a decisive defeat on Ukraine? If that were the case, then why even give aid? Why did the United States even give aid in the first place if that was the goal? That makes no sense.
Number one, and number two, to bring the Russian economy to its knees with economic sanctions. If you listen to General Austin, who
That has failed. That has absolutely failed. It's been years, and if that was the goal, then it is not. If those were the goals, then I will say that they've not been executed very, very well.
was the Secretary of Defense, he's basically talking about knocking Russia out of the ranks of the great powers. This is another way of saying we are presenting Russia with an existential threat.
I mean, it was Russia's decision to invade. It's
Now, does that mean that they will use nuclear weapons? Nobody can say for sure, but there is a serious possibility.
yeah, that's why again, that's why Russia should be given absolute dominance on the escalation ladder. Thank you, Mersheimer.
Avril Haines, who's the director of national intelligence, said on Tuesday when appearing in Capitol Hill that one of the two scenarios in which Russia will use nuclear weapons is if it is being defeated in Ukraine. Well, our basic goal is to defeat Russia in Ukraine. So we have a very perverse paradox here. The paradox is that the better the United States does on the battlefield,
The United States is not involved on the battlefield, so I have no clue what this rhetoric about the United States doing anything on the battlefield is. the United States sending aid was and is not the United States doing anything on the battlefield. It is not sent troops.
With the Ukrainians doing the fighting, of course, the more
Ah, okay. With the Ukrainians doing the fighting. So in other words, it's not the United States doing anything on the battleground. Got it.
more likely it is that Russia will turn to nuclear weapons, and we might end up in a general thermonuclear war.
Hello,
We
Greater
have
End.
to end this war to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes, be very afraid of the nuclear Armageddon.
Now, the motion says that we start by taking into account Russia's interest. This does not mean that we don't consider the interests of Ukraine, the interests of the United States, the interests of NATO. Of course,
Yeah, but you know, what Russia's interests are the most important to Mersheimer, the international relations realist.
we take into account their interests. But we start with the Russians, and the reason we start with the Russians is very simple. They started the war. And what we have to do is figure out
Yeah, we have to take Nazi Germany's interests into account because they started the war, and we have to figure out what interests were, you know, what sort of interests that they had were violated.
out what their interests are, because if we don't know what their interests are, there's no way we can shut this one down. So we're starting with Russia.
Yeah, again, if we don't know what the interests of Nazi Germany are, then we won't be able to shut it down.
Russia's interests. Now the
This
question
is ridiculous.
is, what are Russia's interests? The conventional wisdom, which I'm sure all of you have heard ad nauseum, is that Vladimir Putin is responsible for this war. Vladimir Putin is an imperialist.
Yeah, he is, and true, he is responsible for this war.
He's either trying to create a greater Russia or he's trying to recreate.
He is, he said so himself in his written speech and in his oral speech just before the invasion.
Create the Soviet Union. And what's going on here is that Ukraine is a country.
I'm sorry for trusting Vladimir Putin's own words that he said right before invading. My sincerest apologies for trusting Vladimir Putin's own words as said by him. Oh wow, how stupid of me.
That he wants to conquer and incorporate into Russia. He wants to absorb it. There is absolutely no evidence to support that argument. There is no evidence that he thinks that's desirable.
Apart from his own words, both in written form and spoken.
There's no evidence that he thinks that's feasible, and there's no evidence in the public record that he's ever said that that's what he intends to do.
Oh, there's no evidence. Okay, there's no evidence in the public sphere that that is what he ever said. Putin speech before invasion of Ukraine. Because it feels like this public record, Russian president announced further invasion of Ukraine and delivers warning. Let's see if there's no... Let me see.
Обстоятельства требуют от нас
Circumstances require firm and immediate action from us.
решительных и незамедлительных действий.
Let me see if this is the speech where he...
Народная республика
Donbas People's Republic has asked for help from Russia.
Донбасса обратились к России с просьбой о помощи. В связи с этим
In this regard, according to the Article 51, Part 7,
в соответствии со статьей 51 частью 7
of the United Nations Charter with the consent of the Russian Federal Council,
Устава ООН, санкции Совета Федерации России и во
in
исполнение
accordance with the ratified agreement
ратифицированных Федеральным собранием 22 февраля сего года договоров о дружбе и взаимопомощи
on friendship and mutual aid.
с Донецкой Народной Республикой и ее
Let's
цель
see.
защита со стороны. Поясню. Боевых действий, воля
genocide.
должны знать последствия. Мы готовы на стороне солдат.
But there's the prior to the invasion speech. Maybe it's not on. Computer froze. Hello. Hello, tired Lucy. I am. Hello, Simon Pierre Dubé. I've got really cool news for you, Simon Pierre Dubé. I've gotten recently on stream. I recruited Orlando, DJ Seed. I recruited him, and it turns out that he was not nerfed at all, and he does start with Excalibur, just like he always did. So I looked it up on the internet, and it turns out that Square Enix announced that they would nerf him, but they did not nerf him at all. He's just as overpowered as he always has been. He has all the gear, he's just as overpowered. The only thing that they did was that they buffed all the other characters that were weaker. They buffed Cloud, they buffed a bunch of other characters that join your party. They did not nerf him. They kept him as he is. As he was before. I tested him. He's just overpowered as always. No nerf has befallen him. Cloud has been buffed apparently. Putin pre-invasion speech about empire. Because I'm pretty sure he did talk publicly on the historical unity of Russians and Ukrainians. Oh, okay. Let me look for the Putin 22 February speech. There you go. Press conference. I hope this is it.
International reaction. There have been a lot of consideration, a lot of thoughts about alleging that Putin would like to recreate the Russian Empire and its former borders. When you recognize the Donetsk and the Lugansk People's Republics, what borders are we talking about? Because there are people there are Russian people living there. And the other question we have right now, what about the Minsk agreements? For 7 years now, Russia has supported the implementation of those Minsk agreements. What about them now? Also, just minutes ago, the Federation Council approved your proposal to use Russia's armed forces outside the territory of the Russian Federation. How would you comment that? What would be the scale of that operation?
Using the armed forces abroad, and now the second question was the borders of DPR and LPR and the Russian Empire.
Also the Minsk agreements. What are we going to do about the Minsk agreements now?
Okay, the Minsk agreement, peace agreements. So let's start from the Minsk peace agreements, from the Minsk package of measures to resolve the situation in the east of Ukraine. That's how they're called.
Yeah, we're listening. We're looking through the speeches and trying to figure out if Mersheimer's claim has any merit, that Putin has actually never publicly stated anything about recreating the empire. Lol, Putin looks so thrilled. Hello, Jacob the Great. Well, that's Putin from 2022 when he was still just before the invasion.
not just
I'm looking through the speeches to fact check the claim that there has not been any public statement to the effect of recreating the empire.
7 years, for 8 years, we have been busy with that. And when I say us, I mean Russia and yours truly. We were the ones who drafted these documents. So once again, I would like to reiterate this. We were interested in implementing this package of measures because it is a result of reaching a compromise, because these documents were signed by.
Also, as always, consider joining this page, as I'm fighting to become a small streamer and not a micro streamer.
The heads of 2 formerly unrecognized republics, and one of them, as a result of the terrorist attack, was killed. He died by the hand of the special services of Ukraine.
Ukraine. It's almost like the good old days when German soldiers dressed up as Polish soldiers and did a false flag attack on a radio station, I believe. And then a day after, Poland was invaded in 1939.
Secret Services officer. So, and that's not even a matter of doubts. It was just direct, politically motivated assassination. But that's not what's important. What important is that these documents were signed by the heads of these republics. And back then, we achieved this compromise, and it wasn't an easy thing to do, because initially the heads of these republics didn't even want to be a part of the Minsk agreements. They didn't want to sign them, but finally we have reached compromise.
Those republics were Russian puppets, so don't make me laugh with that statement. They were Russian puppets.
And it was really making a step towards reaching a peaceful agreement, resolving the situation by peaceful means. And yesterday, during the Security Council meeting, it was said that with the efforts of the current Kyiv authorities, it was all brought down to zero. That's why the Minsk agreements, they were destroyed long before yesterday's recognition of the People's Republic of the Donbass. Not by us, not by the representatives of these republics, but by the acting Kyiv authorities. And yesterday's recognition of these republics was dictated by the fact that publicly the leadership of Ukraine, Kyiv, started saying that they had no plans of implementing these agreements. They didn't want to, so what else was left to say? And they have stated that publicly, so why?
I thought NATO was the reason for the attack. I thought, well, of course, the reason why Russia invaded Ukraine changes every single day, every single week, every single month.
We were supposed to wait that the people will be tortured, that this genocide will continue. Those people.
Yes, projection. Projection is the name of Russia. Yes, there was definitely a genocide and torture.
Who live in those territories, it is impossible to continue to look at it idly. We couldn't stand it any longer. That's the
Russia accusing others of genocide is the most laughable thing ever. I have no words. I have no words, considering that Russia is conducting an ongoing genocide against the Ukrainian people as we speak.
Stand of it. Our colleagues from Europe, our counterparts, when we talk to them,
I'm waiting for the empire bit.
They said the same thing. Yes, that's the path to follow, but they couldn't force them, their partners from the current leadership of Ukraine, to do this. So we were forced to make that decision. And in this sense, yes, the Minsk agreements, they don't exist. So why should they be implemented if we recognize these republics? Now, as for the borders, within which borders we are going to recognize these republics, but we have already recognized them. It means that we have recognized all their founding documents, including the Constitution, and the Constitution enshrines their borders within the borders of the Donetsk and Lugansk regions when they were part of Ukraine. And we hope, and I would like to emphasize that all these matters, all these controversies should be resolved during the negotiations between the Kiev authorities and the heads of this republic.
Kiev authorities.
Unfortunately, now we understand that it is impossible because hostilities are still ongoing, and more than that. So they are escalating, but hopefully
They are escalating. Ukraine has been escalating, of course. Of course, the escalation has happened on the side of Ukraine and
in
nobody
the future,
else.
that's what will be done. And about the use of the armed forces abroad, well, how else? Yesterday we signed and the agreements, and these agreements with both
international reaction.
And it was really making a step towards reaching.
Hold on.
It was all have stated that publicly. So what these agreements? They didn't want to. So what else was left to say? Tortured that this genocide will continue. Our counterparts, when we talked to them, they said the same from Europe. That's the extent of it. Our colleagues from Europe, to look at it idly, we couldn't.
Okay.
That's the extent. When we talked to them, that's the path of Ukraine to do this. So we were forced to make that decision. And in this sense, yes, the Minsk agreement, it don't exist. Borders. Within which borders we are going to recognize these republics, but we have already recognized them. It means that we have recognized all their founding documents, including the Constitution, and the Constitution
We
enshrines
have recognized these puppet countries of Russia. Great.
their borders within the borders of the Donetsk and Lugansk regions
Also, those places are not, they're just Russia now.
when they were part of Ukraine. And
So that's laughable, considering that they've just been incorporated into Russia.
authorities and the heads of these republics, and for are still
There are
ongoing,
no
and
republics anymore.
more than that. So they are escalating about the use of, well, how else? And these agreements, articles that say that we are going to help these republics. It has with the agreement abroad. Well,
you go.
how else? Yesterday we signed and the agreements, and these agreements with both Donetsk People's Republic and Lugansk People's Republic. It has articles that say that we are going to help these republics, including with the military. And since there is a conflict with this decision, we make it clear, if need be, we are ready to assume the obligations, exercise the obligations we assumed.
Good afternoon. TASS news agency. Another question about the Donbass. Obviously, Ukraine doesn't want to recognize the sovereignty of the two people's republics. So our decisions are not welcome with the Kievan authorities.
What was that?
What I'm saying is that the Kiev itself does not recognize the Donetsk and the Lugansk People's Republics, and they're not happy with our decision to recognize the two republics. So after everything that happened yesterday and later today, do you see any prospects for rebuilding relations between Russia and Kiev? And if it is possible, what should Moscow do and what should Kiev do to
This was 2 days before the full-scale invasion, by the way.
achieve that?
These matters were raised during our lengthy talks and negotiations with our European counterparts, and we discussed that with the Americans as well a number of times. I don't think we talked about it publicly, but I will now. Obviously, the question is what should happen from both sides, or from Kiev, so that we considered this situation settled in long-term perspective, so that the situation calmed down and we wouldn't talk about any conflicts, especially armed conflicts. So I don't think it's a secret. There is nothing secret about that. The first thing that must be done by everyone is to recognize the will of the people who live in
By this time, Russia has been already in full preparation for the invasion 2 days later.
Sevastopol and Crimea. And I have said that on many times. So how different is this, as this referendum was then in Kosovo, this will, expressing this will? How different is it from what happened in Kosovo? Because there was a referendum there. And I would like to reiterate one more time.
Let me see. Putin's history lecture. I have to find that speech where Putin directly was talking about the Russian Empire and all the lands within it, including Poland. There was a map as well.
This is a
But that is definitely not true.
crisis that is all about the West's efforts to turn Ukraine into a Western bulwark on Russia's border. It involves a three-pronged strategy: bringing Ukraine into the EU, turning Ukraine into a pro-Western.
Ukrainian people wanted to be part of the EU, first of all. Second of all, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukraine was more than eager to join an economic bloc together with Russia. It is through Russian exploitation and through Russian ill treatment of Ukraine that it has been pushed towards the West. It was not of West's design that Ukraine desired to be more of part of the European Union and the Western sphere in general. If anyone was the biggest contributor to Ukraine moving westward, it was Russia itself, and that is a fact.
Western liberal democracy, and number three, and most importantly, bringing Ukraine into NATO. If you listen...
No, that's not true. NATO was never really on the table. NATO was never really on the table. While the European Union has been on the table, NATO has not been.
To Putin's speeches, and you read his writings, he has made it unequivocally clear that this is the principal problem: Ukraine joining NATO.
No, this is not the principal problem. The principal problem is Ukraine slipping from Russia's grasp in any sense of the word. Ukraine moving away from the model that Belarus operates under. That is the principal problem. It doesn't, like, if Russia would not want to keep control over Ukraine, then NATO would not matter, the European also would not matter. None of it would matter. Russia does not want Ukraine to be neutral. Russia wants to control Ukraine. That is a big difference. Russia sees Ukraine as its property, much as it sees Belarus. And Belarus is a case study of what would happen to Ukraine had Russia being able to get what it wants, actually. And a lot of Ukrainian people understood this during the Euromaidan event. That should Should they fail, Ukraine would basically become just like Belarus. And what is Belarus doing now? Emptying its gasoline reserves in order to help Russia, because it has to. It's a puppet state. And that is the role that Russia sees for Ukraine as well, as a puppet state. Neutrality on paper, subservience in practice.
And what has to be done here to solve this problem is Ukraine has to become a neutral country.
Yeah, just as I said, neutral on paper, subservient in practice. That is the reality of it. That is the reality of Russian demands.
Ukraine cannot become a Western bulwark on Russia's borders. You may not like that outcome, and I fully understand that. But if you are interested in preventing Ukraine from being completely destroyed, and you are interested in avoiding a nuclear war, you should be in favor of the motion.
Yeah, you should be in favor of Ukraine losing any sovereignty if you want your imagined nuclear Armageddon to come to pass. World War III, everybody. World War III.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Right on time, down to the final seconds there. Well done. Radek Sikorsky,
done.
you're up next with your opening statement.
Thank you. It is indeed wonderful to be able to debate in person, physically much better than on a Zoom call from
Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs. One of the, if not the most popular politician in Poland at the moment.
a washroom. Some of you may not know that Professor Mearsheimer is in Europe, in my country, Poland, regarded as the Pope of realist theory. But you know, the principle of papal infallibility is one of the victims of this Ukraine war. So I beg to disagree with the professor. First of all, he says there is no evidence that Putin wants Ukraine. Professor, where have you been? Haven't you read Putin's manifesto of last year, in which he tried to prove from doctored or misunderstood or willfully misunderstood Tsarist and Soviet documents that Ukraine is part of Russia? He doesn't just want Ukraine, he denies Ukraine's separate existence. He is conducting your classic imperialist narrative of our peasants wanting a separate state. What do you mean? So he's invaded Ukraine because he wants Ukraine. Now, NATO...
Yeah, that is true. He just failed. He just failed to get it. He was stopped.
You say that that was Putin's interest. Well, President Zelensky has already conceded that Ukraine doesn't need to join NATO. Ukraine can become a neutral country. At which point, President Putin should have said, right, I've won my war, I can go home. And yet nothing like that has happened. He tried to take Kiev, he tried to do regime change.
Yeah, and he failed. That is the only thing that happened. He wanted to overtake Kiev, and he has failed because he's grossly underestimated Ukraine. Russia was grossly unprepared for this war. Thank God it was a mess at the beginning of the war, because it could have ended much worse if Russia was far less incompetent at the start of this war. The result could have been much worse.
The problem with the so-called realist theory is that it's not very realistic. Because it allows Russia to define what its security interests are.
True. My God, the aggressor in this case. We should not be first and foremost placating to the aggressor. We should not be first and foremost, whenever genocidal regime decides to attack their neighbors, the first thing in our analysis should not be, oh, wait, what are their interests? We should think about their interests first and foremost, shouldn't we? Let's think about their interests. That should not be a thing, right?
And if you allow that, then I have to tell you a joke from the Soviet period. With whom does the Soviet Union want to have borders? With whomever it pleases. And with whom does it please? With nobody. So on that theory, great powers could invade whoever they pleased. Also, Putin is not just reacting to what we do. He has agency himself. He started as a reformer, and he ended up as a traditional Russian Tsar who is taking his country backward. It was his decision to stop the modernization of Russia and to try to gather together the former republics of the Soviet Union. He already has troops in Armenia, in Moldova, he had a foray into Kazakhstan, he's in Belarus, he's in Georgia, he's running out of countries to invade. Also, the so-called realist theory,
really bashing the realist theory, aren't we, Mr. Sikorski? I agree. I'm in agreement.
Underappreciates the importance of ideology. It creates a kind of fake moral equivalence between great powers. Whether they are democracies or autocracies, they have interests and therefore have to be respected. Well, I tell you, Tsarist Russia wanted to take Constantinople. Soviet Russia wanted to foment global revolution. Putin wants to recreate Soviet Union. This same country behaves differently depending on its ideology. Just like Iran defined its interests differently under the Shah and differently under the Ayatollahs. So I have to say I respect the attempt to create a theory that would predict reality, that would make it possible for
that ain't it. That ain't it.
us to predict.
What the hell?
To predict what would happen. But the test of a theory should be its predictive power.
Yep.
So according to the realist theory, Russia cannot stand more NATO members on its borders. Well, guess what? Thanks to Putin's aggression against Ukraine, 2 new countries want to join NATO, Finland and Sweden. If Finland joins NATO, Russia will have 1,340 kilometers longer border with NATO. That surely will affect its security. It'll have to put new troops along the Finnish border. If Sweden joins, the Baltic Sea will become almost a NATO sea. That will affect Russia's security. On your theory, if they join NATO, Russia will have to invade them, right? Well, I tell you what, I think it's the Finns and the Swedes who are the realists here, because I think that if they apply and join NATO now, Russia will not invade them. Instead, NATO will be enhanced. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that, yes, we all recognize that Russia has security interests. But what it would take to end this very dangerous conflict is for Russia to acknowledge that other countries
have interests as
including smaller countries, and in particular Ukraine, also have and has security interests, the right to exist, the right to be a democracy, the right to integrate with the West if they so wish. So, ladies and gentlemen, I beg to oppose.
Yep. I don't think I have to explain what side I'm on this, in this debate, right? I don't think I have to say anything. I think, you know.
Stephen Walt will put 6 minutes on the clock and turn the stage over to you.
Thank you. It is a great pleasure to be here and speaking on this important issue. The motion states ending the world's
Stephen Walt.
worst geopolitical crisis in a generation starts with acknowledging Russia's security interests.
Of course, it's always about Russia's interests because Russia is a player and we are all just fodder for its interests. Of course, what a classic tale. What a classic tale is all this time.
It focuses our attention on security because that's the issue driving Russia's behavior, and it's that behavior we have to change to bring this tragedy to an end. John has explained why Russia saw efforts to bring Ukraine into the West as an existential threat, which led them to launch a brutal and illegal invasion. I want to drive this point home by pointing out that major powers, including democracies, often act in brutal and dangerous ways when they believe their security is at risk.
Why should we be alarmed by Russia's behavior? Everybody does it. Even the so-called democracies. So I guess we should just acknowledge Russia's interests and shut up.
Consider China in 1950. China was very...
Yes, China's such a democracy. China's such a beacon of democracy. What a great example. Thank you. Thank you for giving me China as the beacon of democracy
weak at the time,
example.
but when U.S. forces in Korea approached their border, Mao Zedong ordered his army to cross the Yalu River and attack them. We had no intention of invading China, but Mao didn't know that, and he thought the survival of his regime was at risk. The Korean War...
Of his regime, not of the country itself, of his regime. That is an important detail. Of his regime.
lasted 2 more years, thousands of additional lives were lost. We don't like to admit it, but democracies act this way too. During the
China's not a democracy. Mao's China was not a democracy. I have no idea where this example came from, but you could have at least picked a democracy while talking about democracies.
In the 1960s, the United